Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Fintech Ki Baat Dil Se. Today we have Mr. Dilip Modi, who is the founder of Spice Money. And incidentally, when I was stalking him on LinkedIn, I also found out that he's been the president of ASOCAM. So that was a pleasant surprise as well. It's a pleasure to have you, sir, on the podcast. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Shreyas, for inviting me.
It's a pleasure, sir. So, since you have been, I was going through your profile and I learned a lot of things about you. I mean, you have been into you have had multiple businesses before Spice Money as well, and you have been president of prestigious organizations like ASOCAM as well. So, I would quickly want to understand from you, how did your entrepreneurship journey begin? Like, what was it that like, what was that incident or what was that specific thing that made you decide, I would rather be an entrepreneur than do a job?
So, Shreyas, after I completed my engineering and business studies, uh, this is in the
Mm-hmm.
mid 90s, towards 1995, 96.
Mm-hmm.
India was opening up, especially in the area of telecommunications. And
Right.
something that we take granted for today, which is a mobile phone in the hands of every citizen of India.
Mm-hmm.
25 years back, that was not that clear. So my
Right.
journey as an entrepreneur really started in the mobile telephony space. I
Mm-hmm.
had the opportunity to partner with a player from Australia, Telstra, which was a leading telco from Australia,
Mm-hmm.
who were looking to enter India, and the government at that time was looking to give out licenses, to set up mobile networks, and
Mm-hmm.
they were looking at players who came with experience, and because we had the partnership with Telstra, who I connected with, during my studies, we were
Right.
able to, apply for the license, and then were able to secure the license, and then be able to get private equity money to, start the business. So my journey really started, with mobile telephony. Why being an entrepreneur versus a job? I'm a third generation entrepreneur in our family. My
Wow.
grandfather built out businesses in the commodity space, built India's seventh largest group. Then my dad, he was also built his own set of businesses in the office automation, computing, and technology space. So I think, throughout my childhood, I've seen entrepreneurs in the family build out businesses that have scaled and created value. And so
Mm-hmm.
it came to me naturally. And then, after doing my engineering and my master's, I was very keen to start a business. And because India was opening up to, mobile telephony, I saw that as an opportunity for, starting a business in that space. At that time, we did not know how big it would become, but outside India, we were used to seeing people use mobile phones at insignificant numbers, and India was, very small in terms of telephone penetration at that time, and the
Right. Right.
government was to drive telephony penetration in the country. So that's how my journey started. So 95 to 2008, ended up building three mobile networks in India.
Mm-hmm.
We worked together with our partners, investors, and strategic partners to coin Spice as a brand. So Spice as a brand got born, first as a telephony brand, Spice Telecom,
Mm-hmm.
and we ran that business for 13 years, took it public, and then finally had a strategic exit through a sale. Because the industry went through consolidation, we were all regional operators, and finally two operators, Airtel and Vodafone,
Right.
consolidated the industry. So one network we sold to Airtel, and the other two networks we sold to Idea Cellular, which became part of Vodafone. And so
Oh,
today, if you look
okay.
at the Airtel network in Calcutta, or the
Mm-hmm.
Vodafone Idea network in Punjab and Karnataka, all these three were Spice networks, at the start.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So,
Okay. So you.
that's how my journey started.
Mm-hmm.
And then, since then, of course, I got connected with the whole space of digital technology And when you build out a telco business, you work on many things around what all is possible on the telephony platform. And as you can now see, that telcos are no longer just providing telephony; they're becoming like digital players in their own capacity, and
Right,
therefore,
right.
what kind of solutions can be built on the back of it. So, after that, I started DigiSpice Technologies with the idea to start building out digital businesses which can leverage the growth in internet connectivity, not only in India but in the region. So that's how my journey started, Shreyas.
Definitely, that is very interesting. So, how essentially, uh, you moved on from creating a telephone business and probably being one of the topmost players in a lot of regions across the country to moving to a journey of financial inclusion and building Spice Money. Like, what was it that inspired the journey to build Spice Money per se?
So one of the things I realized, Shreyas, is that when we are building out our telephone network business, um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, uh, we also had the opportunity to look at markets outside India, because we used to, benchmark ourselves with what's happening with mobile operators all around the world, including markets like Africa, Southeast Asia, and all that. And
Mm-hmm.
mobile banking, and the role telcos can play in driving, further reach of banking is something that
Mm-hmm.
has been at the center of conversations for a long time. So, in fact, for us, when we looked at countries like Africa, and an example of M-Pesa, in Kenya, with
Right.
Safaricom as the leading operator, building out this mobile money platform in Kenya, which now contributes over 50% of the GDP of Kenya. It was
Mm-hmm.
very clear to us even in those early days that there is a alternate model to driving banking to masses. And after we exited the network business,
Mm-hmm.
me and our team, we were very keen to evaluate that in the whole digital space, how would digital banking evolve as a segment? And,
Right.
we've had a very progressive regulator over the years, both on the telecom side and the banking side. And
Mm-hmm.
as you aware, the regulator on the banking side, the Reserve Bank, has been looking at opening up the sector over the years in terms of issuing new banking licenses, but more importantly, also creating new categories of banks. For
Right.
example, microfinance companies were awarded small finance bank licenses. A lot of the telcos were awarded payment bank licenses. A lot of the payment companies were awarded the payment bank license. So this whole idea
Right.
of
Right.
how to encourage more and more innovation in the banking space. And we for so this was always there for us. So after building out a telco business, which drove connectivity deep into rural India,
Mm-hmm.
the idea was, which are the other industries that could use technology and connectivity to drive reach. And for us, banking and financial services stood out as one such sector. As after telecommunications, that we thought we could try and solve for in terms of driving inclusion or reach of banking to rural India. And so we started working on this. And the real kicker happened, Shreyas, after 2014, when the government came in and really focused on building out on the Jam Trinity, and the fact that 400 million bank accounts got opened, to allow for direct subsidies into
Mm-hmm.
those bank accounts directly into rural India. That we saw the real momentum pick up. The whole India stack getting built out, both on with different layers around Aadhaar and UPI and all of this. So very honestly, as DigiSpice Technologies, we were trying out multiple business models around whether it's digital entertainment, financial services. We had different projects going on, but really,
Right. Right.
we saw that there is this huge opportunity in the space of digital banking, especially in the context of rural India, that has significant legs to scale. And that is where we decided to, focus on banking and financial services. And that's how Spice Money was conceived. And it's really from 2016, 2017 till now, over the last four or
Mm-hmm.
5 years, we've been focusing on, the initial 2 years of building out the platform and the laying down the foundation, and really the last 3 years of, scaling up the business to where it is today.
Right, right. Perfect. So in this entire ecosystem, like when you finally figure out, yeah, like digital banking is probably the next industry that I want to revolutionize. What was the main problem statement that you figured out is something that you would want or you actually want to solve for in the rural India or in the Bharat as it is lovingly termed by the entrepreneur?
Yeah. So shares, actually, the first problem statement that we found was a
Mm-hmm.
very simple. What had happened was that the government was very keen that every citizen in India have a bank account, right? And
Right.
that is something that the government drove with a lot of focus and rigor. The challenge, however, was that
Mm-hmm.
people in rural India had to travel 40 to 50 kilometers, to access a bank branch or a physical ATM machine,
Right.
because the penetration of a bank branch per population or ATM per population is still very low, right? So if you look at the number of ATMs
Yes,
in the
yes.
country, right, it's about 200, 250,000 ATMs, right? And a lot of
Agreed.
this is towards urban compared to semi-urban and rural India. So while I have
Agreed.
a bank account opened in my name in a village, but now if I
Mm-hmm.
want to access that bank account in terms of going and withdrawing cash, I have to go travel a huge distance. And for someone working in rural India, to take that 6, 7 hours to travel toward the bank branch or the ATM to withdraw cash was a very painful experience, right? And I think, with the growth of smartphone, growth of internet connectivity, and the growth of Aadhaar linked
Mm-hmm.
into bank accounts, we realized that, we could solve for the problem of access to an ATM or a bank branch. And so we
Right.
went after that problem. We went after that problem, and we said that instead of the person traveling, uh, 40 kilometers, can we bring that within a 1 kilometer radius? And so, how do we
Mm-hmm.
onboard a local entrepreneur in the village who's generally a local merchant, to function as
Mm-hmm.
an ATM or a bank branch for that village community, right? So
Right.
that's how
Right.
we said we will conceive, we'll try and design a solution using the Aadhaar stack,
Mm-hmm.
for this community. And so that's the problem we went after, and we and that's been the growth hack for Spice Money, right? Where we've been able to date onboard nearly 1 million merchants in rural India who are functioning as ATM come branch operators for their communities, and therefore, the challenge that people had, which was the distance challenge, we solved for that distance challenge. So basically, solving for lack of access.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Perfect. So when you were essentially, I think I step back here. So when you were solving for the lack of access due to distance, right? Because as you said, nearest ATM was let's say 30, 35 kilometers, and the nearest bank branch was probably 100 kilometers away from a smaller village. In that situation, how would you essentially solve for trust? Because considering India and considering specifically rural India, financial transactions are also associated with trust, right? That was one of the main challenges when digital adoption also started pushing in. Even after, let's even if you look at the current scenario in 2022, when there are players like Geo who has penetrated network across India, even on remote hill stations, uh, the mentality of at least the grassroots level, what is it, citizens, it's such that they still don't trust digital transactions, right? So how essentially that solved for? So yeah, as you said, it is through a local entrepreneur, but how did you essentially arrive to that piece, and how was the hypothesis essentially built around it?
So Shears, it's a great question. It's a great question because I think digital literacy, financial literacy, is a bigger umbrella issue that we have to address, going forward together. uh,
Right.
and it's more prominent in rural than urban. But one of the things, therefore, that we have ended up seeing happen is that the merchant network that we've rolled out and onboarded on our digital platform is
Mm-hmm.
today serving as an assisted network for consumers in their community to do financial transactions, right? So from starting with assisting them to withdraw cash from their bank account, to assisting them to do their bill payments, to assisting them
Mm-hmm.
to do open a bank account, to access a savings account. I think effectively you could think of them functioning like a virtual, like a digital branch, like a bank branch in the village, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I think the question is that to begin with, what we are saying is that can we ensure that the customer who's still not digitally comfortable or literate, but has access to someone who is digitally savvy,
Mm-hmm.
assisting them on financial products and services, right? So
Right.
the
Right.
idea is that first we create effectively like a digital bank branch network in a village, right? Now
Mm-hmm.
the question is now, and we onboard banking and financial products on them because the person in that community trusts that person in that community, right? Trust that local merchant, right?
Right.
So the idea is, onboard the local merchant on a digital platform, publish products, educate them, and help them through them serve the community, right? And build on the trust equation that exists between the merchant and the consumer. So, for example, if we talk about credit, shares,
Mm-hmm.
today you
Yeah.
see there is a khata system which is already
Mm-hmm.
operating in rural India between the merchant and the consumer, right?
Right.
So why does that operate? The reason it operates is because there is trust, there's knowledge, and there is that relationship which the local
Mm-hmm.
merchant has with the consumer, where he knows that this guy will pay me, right? So
Right.
he's giving the product on a khata system, saying that you pay me later, right? So what
Right.
we
Right.
call I now pay later is already operating in rural India under the khata system, right? So
Agreed.
so the so the question is, this same person who's operating the khata system, we are enabling him to also function like a bank branch for that community,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Got it.
there is that ability to then do more for the community, and therefore over time one of the roles that they can also do is help them also onboard themselves on the digital platform through a journey that they could take, right? So
Right.
both educating them on the digital side as well as on the financial product side. So we are seeing our entrepreneurs or merchants who we call adhikaris. So we refer to them as spice money adhikaris, and we've got a million of spice money adhikaris on our platform.
Oh wow.
These are digital adhikaris. We are
Mm-hmm.
working. We're going to work with them to drive digital literacy and financial literacy in their community, right? And help them go
Right.
up the
Right.
curve, and help them go up the curve so that they're confident, right? Today, the reason it's a cash economy is because when he had to travel this distance to withdraw cash, why would he
Mm-hmm.
not keep it in cash and not put it back into his bank account? Because it was very difficult to access the branch. Now we're already
True.
seeing a change. We're seeing a change in behavior where instead of withdrawing all his cash, he's leaving some cash behind because he knows whenever he needs it, he can go and withdraw it back. So now can that same spice money adhikari help him to get exposed to saving products, investment products, so that he can be educated through the adhikari. So our goal is to educate the merchant and for him to educate the consumer and for us to work as partners to drive digital and financial literacy in every village in India.
Right. Right. Understood. Understood. So this is pretty interesting, right? So what I really want to understand over here is that when we look at the trust factor over here, actually educating, let's say the spice adhikaris and then sending them out to basically, spread the awareness and basically include more and more people in their umbrellas, whoever, comes to their shop or in their network. But what I would want to understand is in a scenario, like I'll give you a hypothetical scenario wherein let's say a person comes in and deposits a certain amount into their account. And this is a very hypothetical scenario and it's very specific, but that actually intrigued my piqued my interest basically. So let's say if someone comes to us by Adhikari to deposit a certain amount, and let's say for some reason due to network issues or due to some technical issues, the amount is not deposited immediately, but the person has already probably moved on from the shop and gone somewhere else. In that kind of a situation, uh, how does that? I mean, these kind of situations do arise, right? So, How have you seen people respond? Like, do they lose trust in the system, or is there a mechanism where this can be addressed?
So it's again a great question, Shia. So I think about it this way, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
think of two scenarios, Shia. One scenario is that we are thinking of a pure digital solution for that end customer, a pure digital solution, right? Where there is
Right.
no digital branch or a digital adhikari to support that person, right? And he's
Mm-hmm.
doing a transaction on his own on his smartphone, right? Where
Right.
he's trying to move money into an investment product, or he's trying to apply for a loan, or he's trying to do a top up, or he's trying to pay a bill, and the transaction fails, right?
Right.
What does he do, right? versus
Mm-hmm.
versus he goes to a merchant point which he's comfortable with. He's going and buying his regular products from them. He has a relationship, they know each other, he knows all of this, and he says, okay, I want to deposit money into a bank account, or there's a savings product or a investment product, I want to apply for that, I want to put some money there, right?
Right.
So can you assist me to do it, right? And for some reason the transaction fails in your hypothetical example, correct?
Right.
Now, what happens is that we've seen situations, for example, that a person is trying to top up their phone, right? So he gives money to
Mm-hmm.
the adhikar, and somewhere if there is a challenge at the back end, and it happens in all platforms, and the phone top up does not happen, right? Now, what is
Right.
happening is, unlike a do-it-yourself model, here there is a physical merchant which is interacting with the adhikari, right? And he's a
Mm-hmm.
merchant who's directly in touch with us, as someone working closely with us, right? So we have
Right.
tools
Right.
empowered the merchant or the adhikari, right? That in cases where transactions fail, how can we make sure that the consumer interest is protected? Because we know that for this consumer, that money that he's spending is very, very valuable, right? And we
Right.
don't want
Right.
that transaction to get lost. Now, understand this: the adhikari, Shreyas, already has a trust and a relationship with the customer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what
Yes.
happens is he will make sure that that top up happens, right? And we will work at the back end with the players, whether it's the telco or the banks, to make sure that wherever that transaction is gets stuck, it gets unlocked, right? So today the question is, we are building in processes and systems into our platform where,
Mm-hmm.
because we know that the adhikari knows the customer, and if he puts in money, see, the money doesn't get lost, but it gets stuck in some technical problem issue, right, as you're calling it,
Right. Right.
right? So the question is, how do we solve for it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
our goal has always been to keep the customer interest in mind, and make sure that his money does not get stuck, and to work with the backend partners to see where that money is stuck, and make sure that it is either refunded back to the customer or goes into the product that the customer desires, but maintain that full transparency with the customer through the adhikari,
Got
right?
it.
So I think for us, that is why we believe that a combination of a digital come physical network is very important.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, I think of neo banking, digital banking for rural India, we need to
Mm-hmm.
think of both. We have to reimagine both the branch network for rural India as well as the consumer base for rural India, like a digital branch and a digital consumer. We can't think of neo banking for rural India just in form of a digital consumer. We have to also think or reimagine, in our view, around a digital branch, because assistance is something, trust is something, local data is something that you cannot get by just engaging directly with the end consumer. You need an intermediary.
Right. Agreed. Agreed. So I'm glad you brought up the neobank topic. I was actually going to move to something similar. So see, in the last let's say 5 years or 6 years post demonetization since 2016, we have definitely seen the digitization of all sorts of payments as well as banking. That is something that actually kickstarted the fintech revolution in India, and we are seeing more and more adoption from at least the urban consumers moving towards banks, neo banks, as well as what do you say, co-branded credit cards that completely digitally managed, like one card and a few other guys like that. But similarly, what kind of trends have we seen in rural India post demonetization? Do you see people more comfortable, with digital financial products? Have they started being? I mean, have are they adopting these kind of products more? And how do you see this evolving? Let's say over the next decade, wherein do you see rural India being completely digitized and not needing or is an assisted model at all, or do you see it a proper physical model evolving, wherein there will be a proper and a symbiotic relationship between physical agents and the digitized banking model? Or broad also comes into place, the density of guys like spice adhikaris, the rural entrepreneurs. Let's say for every 1,000 people, there is one spice adhikari. Let's say across India, like what are the kind of densities that would be required to achieve that kind of digital or the thing, uh, digital or a physical kind of a model in the next coming years?
Yeah. So I think, Shreyas, if we look 10 years out, in our view, I think, digital literacy is catching up very fast. I think
Mm-hmm.
if you look at the youth in rural India, they are very digitally savvy. As they're getting access to smartphones and internet connectivity, especially on digital entertainment, social networking, education, I think the adoption of internet is scaling up faster in rural than even in urban, and we can see
Mm-hmm.
growth. We can see growth of e-commerce. We can see lots and lots of things happening on the digital front in rural India, and everyone's calling it the new thing, right? For India, and almost all tech companies have a rural kind of a strategy as well to their game. Now,
Right, right.
when it comes to banking and financial services, it's a bit different because you're dealing with complex banking products. You're dealing with
Mm-hmm.
money. You're dealing with people's money, and you need to think about products that work for consumers. So if you think about the last revolution that happened when it comes to rural lending, it was basically microfinance, right? The whole
Right.
microfinance industry that grew in rural India, where these joint liability groups got created, and basically on the
Mm-hmm.
back of social collateral, these large NBFCs got born, and many of them have become small finance bank, and there's also a large universal bank like Bandhan Bank who came
Right.
up, basically, is really at the end of it, more like a microfinance lending institution when it comes to rural India. So that's been
Mm-hmm.
the last revolution, and it's been built on the back of a social collateral led model, right? I think our
Right.
view is going forward as smartphone penetration grows, as banking banks want to now reach out, right, and build products for consumers in rural India. There is a
Mm-hmm.
need to do product innovation in terms of what we could call sachet kind of banking products, right? So I would
Right.
say more like, not like micro credit, micro deposits, micro insurance. So creating small tickets, right? Short duration, products. Thinking through the yield, the interest rate, thinking through how to create schemes around deposits and investments. So I think there's a huge opportunity to drive adoption through product innovation, right? I think players like us, what we are ending up building out is a last mile,
Mm-hmm.
like a digital banking infrastructure, right? So
Right.
basically, it's like a platform and a pipe through which you can flow in a lot of products, but they have to be relevant products, right? So
Definitely.
so there's need for product innovation, right? If you think of
Mm-hmm.
business model innovation, you saw in the case of e-commerce, what grew e-commerce in India was basically cash on delivery, right?
Right.
That's
Right.
what
Right.
created the e-commerce revolution in India, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think as far as rural India on banking is concerned, I think we have to take the end consumer through this journey step by step, in our view. I think eventually we have to give them the confidence that they can also transact with banks directly using their smartphone, but for certain use cases, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we have to make sure that we simplify it for them, right?
Right.
So the question is, rather than create a very complicated journey for them, create a much simpler journey on the phone with them. The regulators been
Mm-hmm.
talking about, how do we create products for feature phone customers, smartphone customers, UPI for feature phones, and things like that. I think we have to create simple products, simple user interface. uh, you know uh, we are thinking through journeys where we can stitch our adhikari platform with consumer platform that are out there, to give confidence to people that they can use their smartphone, which today they're mainly using it for entertainment and education, to also
Mm-hmm.
use it. So if you think about 10 years out, we believe that there'll be a lot more people in rural India, like the youth, who will get into digital banking themselves. We
Right.
believe that our adhikaris will continue to play a role, when it comes to KYC, collections, data, underwriting, education, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore mapping an adhikari to a population of what we are thinking around 2000, 2500 people, right? And they become their assisted kind of network there, right? And their
Mm-hmm.
connect point, and also sit between them and the banks, because the banks need data, they need KYC, they need documentation, whatever they need. This adhikari can enable on the ground for them. So we think that, you know, 10 years out, you will have both a digital consumer engaging with products which are customized for them in a very simple, easy to use interface on their phone. But also, they will
Mm-hmm.
have a button on their phone which will connect them to a digital adhikari in their community. And it will be a seamless digital journey between, let's say, a bank, a digital adhikari, and a digital consumer. And as Spice Money, we will play our role in enabling the seamless journey between the three.
Understood. Understood. So I'm really glad you actually brought up the data piece, right? So since you have people on the ground, feet on street, let's say for every 2,500, 3,000 people, you have one Spice Adhikari out there. What kind of data points do you have that you think you could probably leverage to enable, more efficient credit disbursement to the underbanked individuals compared to what is being done now?
Yeah. So I think, Shreyas, if you look at the whole space of credit, right?
Mm-hmm.
How is it working in rural India right now? The good
Mm-hmm.
news is the good news is that there are lots and lots of ways in which people are able to get access to credit, and their major challenge is not about how much does it cost me. It's about, do I get it when I want it, right?
Right.
And that's how you see rural India dealing with credit. I think
Agreed.
microfinance has played a big role,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of enabling credit to rural India. I think going forward, our view is that the adhikaris on the ground, who themselves run an informal credit, arrangement with consumers for their other goods and services.
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot of understanding around the profile of those consumers, and therefore
Right.
a, a marriage of what they understand as what I would call like social, like a social score, right? Like a community data, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
you can capture through the adhikari, right? So if someone is running a small business, whether it's an agri business, a farmer, a dairy farmer, or a small processing unit, or some small micro enterprise operating in that community or village, the adhikari would have both physical and otherwise access to that customer, to be able to understand the capacity to borrow and the capacity to pay. So
Right.
one of the big reasons why people don't lend actively into rural India is because they're concerned around credit scoring, they're concerned around collections, basically concerned around collateral. And if we have to grow, right, the whole
Right.
informal lending works, right? Okay, gold lending is one way where you can get some collateral, but
Mm-hmm.
effectively, how do you do cash flow based lending in rural India? right? So to be
Agreed.
able to do
Right.
cash flow based thing, you have to be able to have a view on the cash flows of the borrower, right? And
Right.
what we are relying on is that because the adhikari is living in that community, how do they participate with us, in order to figure out these data points which are not formalized yet, right? And
Mm-hmm.
how do we build out what we could call the Bharat data lake, right? Like
Right.
ultimately, our goal is to be able to correct this data and to build out the credit worthiness of this consumer. So we can start the credit journey by enabling a small ticket loan to them, seeing their credit
Mm-hmm.
behavior on the loan, and then helping them build a credit score, right? So the
Right.
idea
Right.
is how do we add to the credit bureau? How do we add to the whole underwriting engine of large banks and financial institutions?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of so being able to build out the underlying data which can help people take a call, so that they can actually they can watch the credit behavior, know what, because for example, we've started this product for some of our adhikaris themselves who are running other businesses, who
Right.
are small merchants in rural India, and we give them
Mm-hmm.
these small loans, 20 to 50,000 rupees, with 3 to
Mm-hmm.
6 months tenor, right? And they have the flexibility to pay within in a 180 days. They can pay within 140 days on a daily basis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have a wallet arrangement with them where we can deduct money from the wallet. And so what happens is we make it easy for them to borrow and easy for them to pay. So how we can
Right.
extend such models to consumers in rural India, right? So when we talk about digital lending, how can we make it
Mm-hmm.
small loans with daily deductions, right? So that we can handle volatility in cash flows, not have this bill shock of end of the month a large ticket loan to be interest to be paid and EMI to be paid and all that. How do we customize for rural, right, credit? So to us,
Agreed.
I think this is a great way to leverage the fact that the adhikari is staying and how they can help us create data which
Mm-hmm.
can go into our engines, which can then help build a credit score on the back of which, and if there's good credit behavior, then it can lead to a further ticket size. So you can move from a small ticket size to a bigger ticket size over time and help build a credit worthiness, for that
Mm-hmm.
entire community, so that formal banks and financial institutions can then, more confidently lend into this community on the back of this data.
Right. Right. So I think this is very interesting. I'm like super excited to hear that you guys have also started lending specifically to the spice adhikaris. So in that piece, as of now, since you've actually started the journey towards lending, what is probably, let's say, the most difficult problem or difficult thing to solve for when you are building to lend to Bharat?
Yeah. So I think it goes back to your last question,
Mm-hmm.
Shreyas, which is the data and data set. So today, that's why we've started our journey of enabling lending on our platform to our adhikaris themselves, because we know them the best. Because they're
Right. Right.
operating on our platform, they're driving transactions on our platform, they're earning through our platform. So at least we have visibility to what sort of earnings they have from our platform. And on the back of those visibility to earnings, we can give them access to credit, and then we know that they can repay this on the back of the earnings on our platform itself, forget earnings from
Mm-hmm.
other businesses that they run. So I think the biggest challenge that we've understood, and I think it's even bigger in rural, is around collections.
Mm-hmm.
uh, how do you viably build a model where the problem of collections can be solved? um, i
Right.
think I think the good part in rural that we've seen is that the NPAs are generally lower because the intent to pay is generally better. So when
Right.
people borrow, they want to pay back, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that, because there is this huge issue of face in the community, and people generally, have, why does a social collateral work? Because people, don't want to default, right? So I think to that extent, there is a good behavior there. But having said that, we have to make sure that we can solve for collection, we can solve for underwriting, we can solve for the whole tenor or the interest cost that we can that is affordable. So I think, and I would say the other big one is also end use of money, right? I think
Right, right,
in rural India, one of the big things we are trying to solve for is what do people borrow for, right? Like if you
right,
think of
right.
microfinance also, what do they borrow that money for, right?
Hmm.
So we really want to. That's why we are lending to our adhikaris, because we know that they are merchants, and they are earning a livelihood by selling products and services within their community. So I think
Hmm.
this question of end use of funds is an important question, right? And this is the area where we are still work in progress, right? So
Right.
Shreya, I know it's a long answer, but there are lots of pieces, and we've just about started.
No, definitely. I think long answers are the best because they actually cover the entire ground rather than just being a cursory just thing. But no, I completely understand the point, right? Starting from let's say solving for the data to kind of basically getting the cash flow data of people who are not spice adhikaris in rural areas, right? Spice adhikaris, as you say, are the lowest hanging fruit for to start lending to, but essentially getting those data points for others in their community to start lending to, then solving for essentially the collection, and then I would assume what you said is more revolving around the purpose on why would they actually, borrow in the first place? Would it be like how would you ascertain that the end use of the funds is actually right?
For example, we would
Those
love
three
to.
are probably the main.
We would love to. Yeah, sure. For example, we would love to see, if there is the agri entrepreneurs, right, who are looking for capital, right, and
Hmm.
they want to they want to come together, invest in some warehousing infrastructure. They no need a loan for that, because if that warehousing infrastructure is there, they can grow certain crops which they can store and then sell later through the FPOs that are coming up. So I think there's a lot happening in terms of organizing that ecosystem, right, through the FPO model and all of that. So if we can help in capex financing, if we can help in which can ultimately help drive incomes, because our whole idea of credit is not just credit, right? It's driving income profile, right? So
Right.
for us, use of the money is very important. It's more productive income growth lending versus consumption led lending, right? So that's what we want to drive towards, so that the money can go towards growing their income levels, which can build out the capacity to then grow and earn more, right? So helping them figure out, right? So there's, for example, a lot of solutions around
Hmm.
agri-tech, all of that, where they cannot afford certain kind of machinery and certain kind of thing. Can we enable them to get access to equipment financing, where they can buy it and then use it in their fields and help drive productivity, which can lead to more income from which they can pay off for that equipment. So I think the whole idea is, how do we create models around rural livelihoods when it comes to credit modeling.
Got it. Got it. So basically, supporting livelihood to essentially enable them to generate more income would be the right kind of direction for you to go
If you
forward
really look
to.
at it, our whole goal is to grow, to help the rural GDP to grow by driving, productivity and output in rural India, and helping them get access to markets. So the idea is to lift the income levels, right? Credit should help in getting people out of poverty and getting people to grow income.
Definitely, definitely. Completely makes sense. So, having said that, since I think we are also kind of short on time, one last question that has been plaguing me since we almost started this interview is, when you look at the urban world right now, the world is probably moving towards metaverse and virtual reality and all those pieces, crypto, blockchain, all of that. In the next 5 to 6 years, we will see more and more use cases around that. But what do you think which tech piece would you think would be an enabler for rural India to be better banked? What kind of technology would be needed there?
Ah, so Shiaz, you've touched on something that is something that we are very excited about,
Mm-hmm.
because we see is that when you think about the meta digital currency world, you think of new technologies like blockchain. What are these?
Right.
what is blockchain trying to build out? It's more like handling this issue of building out a trusted network, right? That you
Right.
have, that how do you put things in the blockchain that they know that's a single source of truth, right?
Right.
So if you think about us directionally building out a Bharat data lake, right? Then for
Mm-hmm.
us, how do we think of, and if you think of, you know, new product innovation, right?
Mm-hmm.
This whole area of digital currency, blockchain, crypto, this is all very new right now, right? And there's a lot of regulatory discussion happening around it. How would it evolve? How will it work and all that? I think eventually we have to see any new technology or any new innovation, what is the problem on the ground it's solving, right? And you know the great part is that we have such progressive regulatory mindset in our country that they
Mm-hmm.
want to start to tap into new technologies to drive for inclusion. So I think
Right.
as Spice Money, we have a track where we are constantly focusing on, what are these new business models and technologies and things that are coming which can help us think fresh, right? Like in the US, we see so many new companies coming
Mm-hmm.
up where they're solving for. You see, how does a bank typically make money? A bank makes money by saying, you give me deposit, I'll give you return on the deposit, and that same money they lend to someone, they'll charge someone that, and they'll make money on the difference between
Right.
the money that they charge versus the money that they give, right? Which is the
Right.
net interest margin,
Right.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
I believe going forward, with digital banking and new business models, the cost of banking will come down, right? Because the
Right.
cost of doing banking will come down, because a lot of the banking value chain pieces will get disintermediated and will be taken up by a lot of fintechs, right?
Mm-hmm.
That net interest margin, right, a requirement can come down, which basically means what? That someone can get more for their money and someone can borrow for less, right? Because you can have new business models where the cost of delivering that product or that service can come down significantly. So
Mm-hmm.
if you think about the internet revolution that's happening in our country, it's happening on the
Right.
back of India becoming one of the lowest data tariff markets in the world, right?
Agreed. Right.
So that's how you're having everyone, including rural India, adopt internet, right? Because cost of
Right.
data
Right.
is
Right.
gone down. So we have to bring down cost of banking, right? All these
Mm-hmm.
technologies, can they help us to bring down cost of banking? If they can help us bring down cost of banking, right, then we believe that a similar revolution can happen where, like we say, a billion people getting onto internet, we can have a billion people getting access to banking products that you and I have access to in urban India, right? But the key is to bring down the cost of banking, and whatever technologies can enable that to happen, I think, as entrepreneurs, our goal is to leverage them to help them bring down the cost of banking so that we can ensure that banking can reach one and all in the remotest part of the country.
Definitely. Definitely. I think that does make sense. I think this has been really interesting conversation with you. I mean, I got to learn a lot myself as well, and I hope the listeners will as well. I think with these, we'll just close this conversation. It's been almost an hour. Thank you so much. It was really, a pleasure having you here. It was really an insightful conversation. Thank you so much for your
Thank you.
time, and thank you so much for joining
Thank
us,
you,
Mr.
Shreyas.
Dilip.
Thank you, Shreyas, for taking out the time to have this interaction. I enjoyed it thoroughly. And
It's a
I'm
pleasure,
looking
sir.
forward to keep our discussion going. All the best, Shreyas. Thank you so much.